I'm going to mute us then if you're recording, Steve.
That's fine. You guys can talk to you. That's fine.
But I think that last week too, Jane said, asked, how do you know you have leaky gut?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that today.
Okay.
All right. So let's go to the top. All right. There we go. Oops. Hold on. That's not what I wanted to do. I want to share my screen. There we go. All right, leaky gut and what you could do about it. So, first of all, I can't believe this is show number 46. Man, I thought I'd run out of topics by now, but here we are. 46th episode. The 47th episode will be slightly delayed because I will be gallivanting around Florida next week, so there will be no 7 o'clock show next Monday night, but we'll pick it up the following Monday night. So just keep that in mind. You won't have to listen to me go on and on next week. All right, so remember the fine print. I'm not a doctor. There's me. I think I got rid of that shirt. Remember our primal blueprint laws. We talk about these every single week, and these are putting these things together. Remember Dr. Chatterjee said mind, body, and heart, but it's pretty much, the same thing. Eat lots of plants and animals. Avoid poisonous things. And, one of those poisonous things is the 80,000 chemicals that have been created since 1900 that we don't have, adequate testing on to see what they actually do to us. Move frequently. You guys are pretty good at that. I see you guys once or twice a day sometimes. Don't forget, there is class tomorrow at 10 o'clock at the South Hills, in case you're interested. Lift heavy things. We can count that as our own. The cat is very interested in the show today. Pick up the pace every now and then. Get plenty of sleep. Hopefully my mom and dad last week got a little more sleep than they were used to. So that's good. Play. Sounds like my mom has been playing all day today. Hopefully she doesn't have eye strain. Get plenty of sunlight. We're getting into the season where we can get our vitamin D from the sun, which is great. All right, avoid stupid mistakes and use our brain. So I only have a reference for all of you for my mom, though, because she uses her brain, especially her spatial relations with her puzzles that she does every day. So there was another thing, avoid stupid mistakes. Oh, I know another one. Don't drive a motorcycle down the parkway 80 miles an hour, because that would be a stupid mistake, or it could potentially put you at major risk. I witnessed that today. I don't think any of you have motorcycles, but just in case. All right, so this week's topic is leaky gut. So we're going to talk about what leaky gut is. We're going to talk about, how it manifests, what are things that are linked to leaky gut, what the major causes of leaky gut are, and then talk about, well, what can you do to fix leaky gut. I think most of you know what to do to fix your leaky gut if you have it, but we'll definitely talk about that today. All right, so basically, our intestines have all these little like phalanges on them. Those little like antenna. See all those on each one of the cells? Those are called microvilli. And they go out, they have a larger surface area so they can help you absorb the things that you need. All right. You can see See how there's like those three little equal signs? I don't know if you can see my cursor or not. Right here. And right there, and right there. So each one of those cells in your intestinal lining is attached to another cell by this complex of proteins that kind of links them together, and they're called tight junctions. All right, so you can kind of think of them as, you know, holding each one of those cells tight to the next cell. It kind of limits the permeability of stuff on the inside of your gut compared to the stuff on into your bloodstream. So if you think about, you know, I think you know what's in your guts because you probably see it once a day. You probably don't want those things in your bloodstream. I could be wrong, call me crazy, but we probably don't want some of those things into our bloodstream. In leaky gut, and we'll talk about the different ways that this can happen, those tight junctions break down. All right, when those tight junctions break down, we'll go through the things that actually break them down. Then, as you can see in this picture, those little like pill form thingies, those are little bacteria. All right, those blue things and the other things could be allergens, food allergens. It could be, you know, pathogens. They could be other types of bacteria. All right, and when those tight junctions break down and those protein complexes between cells break down, that gives all those things easier access to get into your bloodstream. So why is that important? Once those things are in your bloodstream, they are considered foreign bodies. And when there's foreign bodies in your bloodstream, your immune system starts to kick into gear. And then they start trying to, you know, encapsulate these things to kill them, or they try to, you know, make antibodies to go out there and kill them. So your T and B cells go out there to, you know, do the job on these. So your immune system, you know, gets jacked in the high gear when you have leaky gut and things are just going into your bloodstream, because your body doesn't like foreign materials in it, and it's going to do whatever it can to get rid of those things. And, you know, that is from your immune system. That's what it does. All right, so you can sort of think of tight junctions as like the doorman at the hotel, you know, not letting the bad stuff in, but letting the good stuff in. When you have leaky gut, it's kind of like the doorman is, you know, drunk, or, you know, somebody comes in to the hotel or to the apartment complex, you know, slides them $100 bill so they can get in, or the door person sees somebody really cute and says, oh yeah, you can just go in, or friends come in and they say, oh yeah, you can just go in. So that's kind of like what's going on here. Your tight junctions relax and then they let stuff in. Not always the good stuff, but also the bad stuff. So that one layer of cells is the place where all the nutrients get in from your intestines, and they can filter out all that stuff to get into your bloodstream. But with broken tight junctions, then that doesn't happen. It just can allow anything in. All right. So I thought I had another slide in here, but maybe I don't. So what makes this doorman a little less selective on what it lets in? So there's a huge link to all these societal problems in leaky gut. All right. Some causes of leaky gut are drugs. Right. Don't forget, drugs have not been around very long. Right. We know what they're specifically for, but it is next to impossible to know completely everything, all the side effects that it could possibly have. All right. We know you hear some of those medicines. Well, it'll cause this, that, and that. But maybe what they don't mention is those little tiny things that happen that really go undetected in the short term, but in the long term, really can cause some massive damage. Other specific drugs that really, tear up your system are antibiotics. All right, so antibiotics, think about what they are. They're bio. All right, so they're there to kill bacteria, and your gut's full of bacteria. 30 or 40 years ago, scientists thought there was 200 different species of bacteria in your intestines. Now, it said it was upwards of 80,000 species of bacteria that are in a healthy person's gut. So if you're going to take an antibiotic and send it down, destroy everything, and not try to repopulate your gut, then there's a good chance that leaky gut could be one of those results from that. Another major cause of leaky gut is those non-steroidal anti-inflammatory medications, those NSAIDs. All right, so like Advil and aspirin and stuff like that. They used to carry a warning on them saying that do not take longer than 2 weeks in a row. I don't know if that was in the 60s or 70s, but that warning used to be on there where your doctor would tell you that. But now people pretty much just, pop aspirin and ibuprofen and Advil. It's just like they're, some people pop them in just like they're candy. So that can also, be another thing that can cause leaky gut. So some other things that can cause leaky gut is gluten. Gluten's another one that is a big one that really wreaks havoc on your intestines. So I remember, we got Elliot tested on, for gluten sensitivity. He was sensitive, but what they actually look for is they will take a gut biopsy, and take a little piece of your gut, and all these little fingers that are on your those microvilli, they'll actually get worn down, and they'll be like little stumps, or they won't even be there. So that really inhibits, absorption of nutrients when, you have all these little microvilli, they just get lopped off. So gluten sensitivity is a big thing. And personally, I think, 99% of people in this country in particular are either gluten sensitive or sensitive to those things that are delivered with gluten. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. PPIs is another huge one that really contributes to leaky gut. So those are those proton pump inhibitors. So those are the things that help with indigestion, reflux, those types of things. And people pop those like candy as well. All right, a lot of people take them for, they claim you have an overactive, stomach acid or heartburn or reflux. I've had several clients go off gluten and not have any reflux. And I think, my mom will even tell you that, when she cuts back on some of those things that do have gluten on them, and she has less reflux. So, and again, we'll talk, I'm not 100% sure it is gluten, but we'll get to that in a little bit as well, because there's some, interesting research on that. Any questions on any of that before we move on? Go ahead, Sally. Hold on, you gotta unmute yourself. Unmute yourself.
I think last week you told us you would give us some alternatives for Advil
I
to
thought,
help alleviate if you have a headache or bad muscle pain, some things you could take besides Advil.
yeah. Just remind me when we get to the remedies, because we did talk about some of those already in different contexts. So I think we just got to wrap around and talk about some of the things that we've talked about before in respect to pain management, which I think we talked a little bit about last week too, with the arthritis thing. All right, so we'll get to that in a minute. So back to gluten real quick. Just so you know what these things are in. So they're obviously in wheat, they're in barley, and they're in rye. And what it actually does is release a chemical messenger called zonulin. All right, this zonulin is actually a chemical that tells your intestinal junctions to open up. All right, so when those things open up, then things are able to move into your bloodstream a lot easier. So if that zonulin response is strong enough and active long enough, then this can trigger this leaky gut as well. So there's a protein in there that it mimics to trigger that zonulin response. So that's not, I'm going to turn my light on so hopefully you can see me a little better. There we go. Sun's going down. And it's a little bit, backlit behind me. All right, so let's go to the causes number 2. I've already talked about some of these. Alcohol is another one that can contribute to leaky gut, especially chronic, bathing your intestines with alcohol. Chronic stress is another one. All right, if your body is constantly worried about the amount of cortisol in your body, for stress for a whole bunch of different reasons, that can contribute to leaky gut as well. This Candina overgrowth, it's a fungus that populates. It does have a function in your system, but it can also, so all these bacteria in your system, and they're counterbalancing, some are good, some are bad, and they kind of like, take care of each other. And in a healthy gut, the good one, if there's too many bad ones, then the good ones will, combat them a little bit, and there's kind of like this tug of war and stuff. But when you take those antibiotics, or you're thinning out the diversity of your microbiome, this Candina overgrowth can happen. And you probably have heard of SIBO before, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So once you kind of thin out some of the good bacteria, then this Candida and these other bad bacteria can cause an overgrowth and really wreck your system. IBS is another cause from this leaky gut syndrome. Chemotherapy can really do some damage to your microbiome in your gut. And then glyphosate is the last one. And I wanted to read one thing. This was an article published in the National Institute of Health. So you don't have to squint and read it. I'll just read it for you. So it says celiac disease is associated with imbalances in gut bacteria and can be fully explained by the known effects of glyphosate on gut bacteria. Characteristics of celiac disease point to impairment in many cytochrome P450 enzymes, which are involved with detoxifying environmental toxins, activating vitamin D3, catabolizing vitamin A, and maintaining bile production and sulfate supplies in the gut. Glyphosate is also known to inhibit P450 enzymes. Deficiency in iron, cobalt, molybdenum, copper, and other rare metals associated with celiac disease can be attributed to glyphosate's strong ability to chelate these elements, which means it can latch onto those and send them out, these heavy metals that you need. Deficiencies in tryptophan, tyrosine, methionine, and I don't know how to pronounce that word, associated with celiac disease match glyphosate's known depletion of these amino acids. Celiac disease patients have a risk of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which has also been implicated in glyphosate exposure. Reproductive issues associated with celiac disease, such as infertility, miscarriages, birth defects, can also be explained by glyphosate. Glyphosate residues in wheat and other crops are likely increasing recently due to a growing practice of crop desiccation just prior to harvest. We argue that the practice of ripening sugarcane with glyphosate may explain the recent surge in kidney failure among agricultural workers in Central America. We conclude with a plea to governments to reconsider policies regarding safety of glyphosate residues in food. So imbalances in gut bacteria have been linked to many diseases, including cancer, diabetes, obesity, and depression. So the bottom line of that is, I didn't even know this until I looked it up in this article from the National Institute of Health, in that they use this in sugarcane production too. So even in, sugarcane, there's a glyphosate load. I didn't even know that until, I was doing the research for this. So that's kind of scary as well. Okay. Any question about the causes? Glyphosate is really hard to, as you can tell from just what I talked about, it's really hard to avoid without really taking some, precautions. This little diagram over here just talks about stress, toxins, food particles, drugs, pathogens, and organ malfunctions can cause GI inflammation and then cause these tight junctions to break. And maybe you don't have a food intolerance to gluten or some of the other things, but if your tight junctions break down and stuff slides in, and then you get antibodies from those particles of proteins that are not really functional proteins and they haven't been broken down all the way to amino acids, then you can start developing some food intolerances. So once you get those food intolerances, then you start having immune issues because your immune system is on overdrive with all these little particles floating around. And that can lead to autoimmunity and autoimmune diseases. Whew. All right, so here's some things that leaky gut has been linked to. And I get some really interesting studies that I've read about autism and depression. So we got food allergies, migraines, tiredness, and chronic fatigue. If you can't read these are pretty small. Asthma, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, skin conditions, even eczema, is linked to that. Autism, depression, new stuff comes out every day. IBS, irritable bowel disease, food intolerance, and obesity have all been linked to leaky gut. So part of this leaky gut is because our bacteria in our guts have been compromised. So I'm going to tell you about this autism study I just heard about, this couldn't have been more than a week ago in one of the podcasts that I listened to, but they gave a bunch of autistic kids fecal implants from people that had healthy microbiomes, and the symptoms that they had from autism got better by 50% just by increasing the diversity of their microflora in their guts just from a fecal implant. Right? That is, to me, that is pretty powerful stuff. That we can increase the diversity of our microbiome in, autistic kids where they really don't, don't feel like there's much hope for them, and their symptoms get better by at least 50%. That's crazy. There's even a whole new branch of psychology, psychiatry called nutritional psychiatry, where they're treating these mental health diseases with nutrition now. All right, it's come full circle. 2,500 years ago, Hippocrates told us how to treat all these diseases, but it's not till 2,500 years later that some doctors are finally starting to figure it out that he was probably right when he said, "Let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food." All right, some people are just starting to figure that out, that it might be a real thing. Oh, and there's one other thing about eczema, however you pronounce that word. They've known that leaky gut has been linked. Hey, Rebecca. Rebecca. Sorry, we're gonna have to wait. They've known since 1986 that leaky gut contributed to eczema. So even all the way back then, people knew that these skin diseases, some of these skin things, were caused by deficiencies in your gut. So that's pretty crazy. Obviously, drug companies don't want you to know that. Okay, so moving along. So what can we do about it? So there's an actual test called the intestinal permeability test that you can actually get to see if you have leaky gut. There's some other ways to tell as well. But that's one way, but it may be very hard to convince a regular doctor that you need that, because as some of you have been learning over the last almost 50 weeks, that you ask your doctor about these things and either they don't want to do it or they have never heard of it before. All right, because this stuff is new, and they're not going to school. They didn't take any nutrition courses ever. They're not required to do so. I mean, Dr. Hyman himself said he didn't take any nutrition courses when he went to medical school. He had to learn all that stuff later. So, this is a thing. When people come to get orientations at the gym, I always ask them about their food. And then they go into their, their societal conditions that they have. And I'm like, well, did the doctor have you do this test? Did the doctor have you do this test? And they're like, well, no, they didn't mention any of that. So, because they don't know. They really don't. Some of them really don't know. Or maybe they do know, but they don't know how to interpret the results. So what can you do about it? You already know all these things. We've talked about them a bazillion times. In fact, I know for sure we've talked about them, 46 times. So, trying to control your stress. Avoiding alcohol is obviously, an easy one. Get better sleep. We had a whole talk on sleep. Avoid gluten. You know how I feel about that. But even more so to avoid gluten is that, maybe you can digest gluten sufficiently, but you're getting the Roundup with it that your body has no clue how to deal with. So am I totally convinced everybody's gluten intolerant? Maybe, maybe not, but I have a really good feeling that probably 100% of us have a Roundup intolerance. Right? Nobody ever died because they didn't have too much Roundup or not enough Roundup, right? So our bodies just don't know what to do with it. So whey protein and collagen is one way to help those linings in your gut. We've talked about collagen a lot because it's that building block of all that connective tissue.
Stephen,
Yeah.
I thought whey was wheat.
No, whey is from milk. Whey
Oh,
protein.
it's like a dairy byproduct?
Yeah.
Oh, because I've been buying plant-based protein powder thinking I'm getting something better because I thought whey was bad.
No, I mean, if you got grass-fed, whey, I mean, if
Oh,
you
it's
got
okay.
grass-fed milk whey, then
Yeah.
you should be fine, or better at least.
All right. Thanks.
So the other one is try to get resistant starch and other prebiotics. So what's resistant starch? We talked about that before as well. Like green bananas are one way to do that. Those are very hard to get down. Cold potatoes is another one. They can be sweet, any kind of potatoes. But when they're warm, those sugars break down a lot easier and get into your bloodstream faster. When those are cold, then they stay as long chains of starch, and then your microbiome in your intestines can use those things as food and help them flourish. All right. Other really good sources is Inulin Powder. A little harder to find. Jerusalem artichokes is another thing, which actually is labeled Inulin Powder. Pectin, apples is actually a good source of those sugars to help your microbiome as well, because they increase butyrate production, which help support your healthy, microbes in your body and your intestines. All right, any question about that? Go ahead, Chuck. Go ahead, you can unmute.
How do we stand with oats vis-a-vis wheat, barley, rye?
All right, so that's a great question. And I ran into another reason why oats might not be as good, just because there's more often than not, they're processed in the same place as wheat. More often than not, they're close to fields of wheat. So there's a lot of cross-contamination that happens in oat fields and wheat fields. So oats are a little bit tricky. I know when we did the detox, there was some oats in there. I specifically put in there organic oats because at least organic oats, you're maybe a little bit closer to getting, all that stuff out of there.
So per se, they're okay, but they can be affected by where they're grown and how they're grown.
Yeah, right. A lot of cross-contamination.
Thank you.
Alcohol also limits inhibits zinc absorption too. So you got to be careful with alcohol. Zinc helps that those tight junctions get stay tight. And when you use alcohol and you deplete your zinc, that can contribute to leaky gut as well, as far as the mechanism goes with alcohol. All right, part 2 on what to do is have probiotics and fermented foods. All right, there's a bunch of different fermented foods. In fact, I went to Wegmans one time and they had a whole couple cooler cases of all fermented foods. Right, so again, we've talked about these before, but those are like your sauerkraut, your kimchi, your kombucha. I think Rebecca bought like a carrot and beet sauerkraut type thing, which she really likes. I'm drawing a blank on all the rest of the fermented foods, but I'm sure there's more of them. Miso is another one. So, so those help, with your intestinal microflora. Probiotics, those are actual little bacteria that you can take in pill form and theoretically help your intestinal bacteria. Prebiotics is another thing which we talked about on the last slide. All right, vitamin D, zinc, bone broth is another one because it delivers collagen. And then exercise intelligently. So what does exercise intelligently mean?
Don't hurt yourself.
Stephen.
Yep.
So probiotics and prebiotics, they're two different things?
Yeah, probiotics are the actual bacteria that you can take by mouth and help populate your guts. And then prebiotics are basically the food for the probiotics.
Oh, so there are so many of those. How would you know which one to take on your own?
Yeah, it's really hard to take. I mean, it's really hard to determine.
And how do you know that they're doing what they're supposed to do?
Yeah, so that's some of the other things that are, that's just not 100% sure about, just because, can it survive, your stomach acids to get in there, which is probably why. When I talked about those autistic kids and people with depression, when they have fecal implants, they do so much better because they're actually getting that bacteria right into their guts and right into their digestive tract to help repopulate that. I don't know if you remember on one of those last slides, it said it could take up to 6 months if you do, a semi-hardcore repopulation of your guts, it could take up to 6 months after you take an antibiotic to repopulate your guts. So, that's kind of a big deal, that, when you take antibiotics, it's really killing so many different things, and it takes your body a long time to recover from that. So back to exercise intelligently. All of you have been here a lot before, so you know how to exercise intelligently. Those people that don't exercise intelligently are the ones that are really gone hardcore all the time. And, when you go really hard, you feel really good, but it's also a stressor on your system. So that's why, we've talked about, really knocking it out maybe 1 day a week at the most. Because once you start doing that 4, 5, 6 times a week, when you're really killing yourself and what people think they're getting a really good workout, they're just causing more stress in their system. And then more stress causes more cortisol, which can consequently, compromise your gut lining in those tight junctions. So if you just think like hunter and gatherer like 10,000 years ago, they didn't run around like nuts all the time, right? They just walked around all the time. They didn't kill themselves. They might have had to run away from, an angry tribesman or, you know, a tiger or a lion or whatever, but you know, that was not very often. So when we talked about at the top of the show, you know, sprint once in a while, we're just trying to mimic what used to happen, you know, 10,000 years ago, before the dawn of agriculture. Once agriculture hit, everything went bad. All right. So we've already talked about some of these supplements. We already talked about omega-3, which is an anti-inflammatory. We've talked about probiotics. You know, those are the things that are trying to populate your guts. L-glutamine is an amino acid that is really favorable for, you know, things that go on in your intestines. Fiber, those are those prebiotics, okay, like the potatoes, you know, that konjac root that I take every day is a fiber, but that's more for rogue cholesterol than, I'm taking it more for rogue cholesterol than, you know, working on my gut microflora. Collagen and zinc. Zinc is a really good backbone for a lot of enzymes that do a lot of magic in your body. All right, most of those we've already talked about. Okay. All right, so our summary. I don't think there's anything on this list that you've not heard before. All right. Eat whole foods, foods that actually look like food. You know, get some sun. Increase your anti-inflammatory fats. You know, those are your omega-3s, those are your coconut oils, extra virgin olive oils that are on the good list, and avocado oil. So those are good fats. Eliminate foods that feed the bad bugs. So those are your processed foods. If you have a lot of gas, like if you got farts a lot, there's a good chance you're feeding into those bad bacteria. All right, like sugar. Sugar makes people gassy. You're feeding those, you know, bad bugs in your intestines. You know, I'm sure you've eaten some foods that gave you a lot of gas before. You can probably even name which ones they are. Eat fermented foods to seed your intestines. You know, sleep better. Again, that's where all the magic happens, when you're sleeping. That's when your body can recover, all right, and start doing some repair. If you don't get good enough sleep, you know, your body doesn't have a chance to do that. And just anecdotal, you know, experiment of one here. I really do find that if my watch tells me that I got good or very good sleep, I mean, it could be semi-psychological, but I really, when it says very good, I really am amped up for that day. I mean, I really have a lot of energy throughout the whole day. When I get down to the compromise zone, I mean, I don't struggle through the day, but it's a little bit harder to get through than it would normally be. So these watches are supposed to be about 80% accurate. So I would say 80% is probably, you know, around about the right amount, or pretty accurate. And get exercise. And you guys are doing that too. All right. So that is that. I thought I threw one more slide in here, but I cannot find it. All right. Any questions? Go ahead, Sally.
Yeah, I don't want to leave this specific thing for Advil. Like, we had this house emergency and we're ripping up carpet and trying to get it up before it starts molding. And
Right.
yeah, so my back hurt. And then I had a very severe reaction to Moderna. I mean, I had an incredible headache and earaches and everything else. So what are some specific things that, I mean, it's not like I chew Advil every day, but are there some specific things that can be done when you feel like you do need a pain reliever?
So, you know, if you're using them sparingly, I don't see that why you would not be able to recover from that pretty quickly.
Okay.
But I'm sure you know people that just take them every day, and you know that's where you're going to start getting into trouble. But
Okay.
magnesium is a really good thing that most of us are deficient in, you know, to get. I have a transdermal cream that you can that I put on myself to get some extra magnesium, and I do take it straight up too in a powder form. Last week, those people that participated in that detox, one of the things in there was to take Epsom salt baths, because your body can absorb those you know, magnesium, you know, through the water. I've had some people that really respond well to those Epsom salt baths. I would definitely give that a try if you are, and hopefully you're wearing like N95 mask when you're doing this too. Are you guys? Hopefully you're protecting yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. So there's a lot of things floating around. And then like we talked about last week, like the turmeric is a natural anti-inflammatory omega-3. But it's more long-term than like an acute, like bam. A lot of people respond to like just drinking tons of water when they have migraines too. As far as like the vaccines go, I'm not 100% sure what the mechanism is to trigger a headache from those. So I can't really at this point speak to that. It may even be too soon to know.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm done with it for now anyway, until we have to do booster for variations. But I mean, if you get hit with a headache, you want relief right away.
Right. Was that from the first one or from
No,
the
it was
second
from
one
the
or both?
second. It was from the second one only.
Okay.
I read it someplace. It says before the injection, you should drink, I don't know whether 250 or 450 ml of water, and after the you should drink the same amount of water.
Oh wow. Okay.
That's a lot of water.
You're just 2 weeks too late with that, Jay.
Yeah, I know. I had mild, but I didn't have any reaction.
I have to remember that when I get back from Florida, I think I go on the 7th. So I'll have to double my water before. I think my mom, when did you get yours, Mom? Wednesday? Did you get your second one on Wednesday?
Thursday.
Okay. Did you hear what Jane said?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't hear that, but you know, there's a lot of people saying a lot of things. So
James.
all right. Anything else?
I gotta go. My gut's leak.
Oh,
That is
better run.
No more visuals.
No more visuals, please.
You're gonna have to edit your recording, Steve. All right. Well, thank you, Steve.
That's good.
All right.
Steve.
Thanks for coming, and let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
everybody.
We'll talk
Good night.
to you in a
See
couple
y'all.
weeks.